Hello, I'm Harley Schlanger. Welcome to our weekly dialogue with Helga Zepp-LaRouche. Today is November 13th, 2020. It would be an understatement to say that this is a tumultuous period in US history. We're in an unprecedented situation. We have an election which was filled with fraud, which was built on top of an ongoing coup. The president is fighting. The population is in a state of mobilization. And I think we should start with that, Helga. There were a couple of developments yesterday. The Pennsylvania court overturned the ruling by the Secretary of State, which allowed an extension of the time for mail in ballots. The Michigan State Senate said that they're going to nothing is determined until December 14th. So, what can you tell us about the state of this battle?
Well, if you would read only the European media or most of the European media, you would think, that the election is over, that Biden is the new president, that Trump is completely besides himself, but totally off. But the reality is quite different, and I think that there are some people in other countries who realize that what is going on in the United States is a battle which not only decides who is president, the next president of the United States, but which decides, if there is any thing called democracy, freedom of the press, freedom of opinion, freedom of speech, in any freedom, or if we are going into a world dictatorship. Some people realize that, but if you look at it, the facts are, first of all, that there was absolutely massive indication that there was an unprecedented vote fraud. Vote fraud is nothing new, neither in the United States nor elsewhere. But if you look in detail of what happened in this election, it is unbelievable. And given the fact that most intelligent people have the absolute ability to know it, for sure governments have the possibility to know what's going on, one has to draw conclusions how the world is reacting to this incredible developments in the United States. Now, first on the so-called mechanics of it, this is all now being investigated, but there was such a disorderly process with the mail-in ballots, the absentee ballots, the fact that, in many instances you had the election looking good for Trump around midnight, then people would go to bed. And in the morning, it was all turned with big advantage to Biden. So what it clearly has happened is that in the wee hours of the night, these things were switched. So you had such phenomena that all of a sudden you had 130,000 votes appearing in the column of Biden and none, zero, in the column of Trump, which is a statistical impossibility. Then, we had this very interesting webcast a couple of days ago, actually two of them, with Kirk Wiebe and Bill Binney and Colonel Black, the first two of them being former NSA officials turned into whistleblowers who described in detail the techniques used through cyber techniques, the program Hammer and Scorecard, which is unbelievable because, this is a scorecard, apparently a program where you can exchange the content of the packets which travel through the internet within microseconds. So people were switching the votes from Biden to Trump. Now, this is something where a lot of people in the hacker community and computer community internationally are now, really, they have really gotten it that this happened. So circles in the Chaos Computer Club, circuits and so forth, there are many people studying this now. I mean, this is unbelievable. Then you had the so-called glitches, where supposedly there was a computer failure where all of a sudden votes turned up in the favor of Biden. Now, as Bill Binney, the former technical director of the NSA, was explaining on these webcasts, is there is no such thing as a computer glitch. These are all programmed in mistakes which are part of the fraud. So, I mean, just the elements are so many. And, you know, Harley, since you are the expert on election fraud in the United States, you have been following this for a long time. If I forgot major things, please fill it in. But let me just say this. Even if people don't believe what I just said, or don't believe that Trump has a point, just think about one thing. I watched some of the programs in the recent, since the election, and there was a press conference where Trump gave a press conference, I think from the White House, and then all of a sudden he was interrupted by all the TV station heads who, would just blend out half of the picture of Trump, put their own face on the screen and say, since we disagree with what President Trump is saying, we think he's articulating fake news, we will not broadcast this. Now, if you think about it, this means either something unbelievable is taking place, or the United States, the most powerful country with the most powerful president on earth, have just been effectively turned into a banana republic. Now, that should give you to think that, a sitting president is being treated that way. So something unbelievable is taking place. And Harley, please give us more details about this story.
Sure, there are a couple points I would make. I mean, the first one, the most obvious one, is what is the rush? If there are questions that are outstanding, if there is evidence, and there is evidence of fraud in the swing states, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, that some are related to the Dominion software voting systems, some with dead people voting. Biden's strongest demographic is dead people because they vote for him 100%. But when you see all these irregularities, the question is, what is the rush? Why go ahead and proclaim Biden the winner when there's things outstanding? And that's where you see what the problem is. They don't want these things exposed. They're trying to silence it. That's media censorship. What does the media say? The media says these charges are baseless. I heard that word in almost every media. Now, it's ironic, isn't it, that the same media that ran really baseless charges about Russiagate against Trump, that were proven to be total lies, frauds cooked up by intelligence services to get Trump out of office, they treated those as facts. They still do. But when someone raises a claim that defends Trump, they claim that it's baseless. So we have till December 14th before the states ratify the electors. The Electoral College in 50 states meet on December 14th. This is going to be a fight, but it looks like the president is holding firm. There are people rallying around the country to support the count. And I think that's the most important thing, that it is a real battle. That's a culmination of 4 years of an effort to stop Trump from changing the policies of the United States. Now, Helga, that's a good segue into the next subject, which is the shakeup going on at the Pentagon. The firing of Esper as defense secretary, bringing in Christopher Miller, bringing in Colonel Douglas Macgregor, who's an advocate of troop withdrawal. This is really shaking things up, isn't it?
Yes, I think that, the uproar about Trump doing that is also equally big, about that he dared to get rid of Esper. Now, it's his good right. He's the official president at least until January 20th. This escaped some of the European leaders, I think, including Steinmeier, who outrageously demanded that Trump should leave the White House right away. So that there are even, letters to the German embassy in the United States saying that these people should read first the American Constitution. So, it is unbelievable. So I think that consolidates and confirms completely what we have been saying in our programs, namely Colonel Black, the former, he had a leading position in the judicial department of the Department of Justice, so he knows very well what he's talking about, and he was also a state senator of Virginia. He, a couple of months ago, I think at the Schiller conference on September 5th, warned that there was a military coup in preparation against Trump. Now, this led then the Pentagon to come out publicly saying there is absolutely no role of the military in the election. So they denied that. But I think the fact that Trump kicked out Esper was read by some knowledgeable people around the world in the correct way. One of them being notably the former Undersecretary of Defense, Willy Wimmer from Germany, who said that Trump did that, kicking out Esper, in order to prevent a military coup. Now, I think this is absolutely on the mark. And if you look at the pedigree of the people who are replacing the two undersecretaries of defense and the chief of staff, these are all people who are on the record that they have been opposing Russiagate. They come in general out of the political circles of General Flynn, who was a very clear opponent of the endless wars and especially the Obama policy in respect to ISIS and Al-Qaeda in the Middle East. So these are people who are on the record that they are for ending the endless wars, that they want to bring the American troops home to the United States. So I think this is a very, very interesting situation. And one could only hope that Trump continues that and also kicks out Gina Haspel, the head of the CIA, and Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, because these were the people who were blocking his order, actually, to declassify all the documents pertaining to the British involvement of the coup against him, the whole Russiagate story, and all these various maneuvers and intrigues. So that would be the best next step Trump could do, because obviously the enormity of what has been going on by this establishment, and the establishment, the same people who are now so happy that Biden supposedly is in and everything can go back to normal. These are people who all have knowledge about what is going on. So I think there is a much, much larger story to be discovered, and I think it's really an amazing process we are watching right now.
Just a minor correction. Colonel Black was in the criminal law division of the Pentagon, not the Justice Department. They probably wouldn't let him into the Justice Department. And the last point you made about the rest of the world, well, Chatham House, British intelligence, the center of the deployment of geopolitical war policy around the world, came out effusive in welcoming Biden, saying that this will cement the special relationship. Remember, it was in December 2018 that the House of Lords said a second term for Trump would mean the end of the special relationship. So it shows again that given so much of the coup operation of Russiagate came out of London, the British may have had a hand in the vote fraud operation, certainly in supporting Biden over having Trump get an honest recount. Now, Helga, at the same time, again, speaking of the British, the World Economic Forum, Prince Charles, and a bunch of genocidalists have been having a conference on the Green New Deal and the global reset. This is also something that they're going to try to push in with the Biden administration and would probably be stopped. I mean, I think definitely would be stopped if Trump is reelected. What do you have on this?
Well, as we have been saying for a very long time, this system is completely finished. The financial system of the transatlantic sector is bankrupt. they have been pumping money, liquidity, quantitative easing, Corona recovery funds, stimulus packages. Altogether, I think we are soon approaching 30 trillion dollars since a little bit more than a year. Now, obviously, all of this money, or almost all of this money, has not gone into the real economy. It has gone into propping up the bankrupt banking sector. And now at this conference, which just took place, I think, in London, uh, they basically said now is the time to go for the Great Reset. Lagarde, the head of the European Central Bank, just today said, she is ready to go with the digitalization of the euro. All the central banks want to digitalize their currencies and have that ready by January 21. So we are really on a short notice. And obviously, once you have the currencies digitalized, it will be the end of the small banks, the savings and loans banks. They want to basically clean out the debt. The debt is unpayable, and it will be much easier to write down the debt once you have the currencies digitalized, and it will be the same kind of robbing of the life work of citizens like it was when the great inflation occurred in Germany in 1923. So this has to be absolutely opposed. You can have the role of digitalization, but if the policy is towards, green agenda, controlling the investment only into green industries, it will be the end of Europe and the United States as industrial nations. Because, once you go into low energy flux densities in the production process, as it is with green technologies, you cannot maintain a modern industrial country. So what we are looking really at is an effort by the central banks to carry out the regime change they have been talking about since the Jackson Hole meeting last year, which at this point would really mean the global fascism, global monetarist, green economic fascist. This is a very big danger, and the only remedy against that, and there is a remedy, would be the immediate implementation of a global Glass-Steagall separation of the banks, put the commercial banks under state protection, let the investment banks deal with their own problems, but no taxpayer money anymore for them. Then go for a national bank in every country, a credit system, and then cooperate on real investments in infrastructure programs. Best to cooperate with the Belt and Road Initiative, develop Africa, develop the Middle East. All of these things would be eminently possible, but it does require a mobilization of the population, which in the United States is absolutely taking place. What you have seen with the Trump supporters, there is something which the European media would never admit exists, and that is that there is a spirit of sovereignty, that there is a spirit which may not be conscious in the mind of everybody, but it is indeed, reconnecting to the spirit of the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence, and gaining sovereignty back. And we urgently need that discussion in every country.
And Helge, let me tie that into the vote fraud fight in an interesting way. Part of the proposal for the Great Reset is to take fiscal policy, spending policy, out of the hands of elected legislatures and put it into the hands of technocrats working for the banks, which means if you elect a Congress or a parliament which has a different idea about where to invest money than the banks, forget it. It doesn't matter. So your vote doesn't count. The same way the fraud negates your vote. So I think this fight for the honest account of the voting is crucial for everything because, as you said in the talk we had on Tuesday, there's no democracy, there's no republic with sovereignty if this fight is lost. Helga, we just have another minute or two. There was an interesting development in the opposite direction to this globalized bankers' dictatorship, which was the discussion between Iraq and China for an oil for technology deal. Is this along the lines of what you and your husband had been fighting for many years?
Yes, this is actually a very interesting proposal. My husband was campaigning for that. He told all the oil producing countries over a long period of time that they had to use their revenues in order to move away from just being a raw material exporting country by developing the kind of industrial development which also would allow them, for example, to use the oil in chemical production and reprocessed products. So this is actually happening right now. This was already on the table a year ago, then it was interrupted, but now it's completely back. That the oil which will be sold to China over a longer period of time uh, will be used for such development. Now Iraq will put the revenues of this oil into a Chinese bank until it's accumulated to be 1.5 billion. Then China will kick in another 8.5 billion, and then a real port will be developed, which will give Iraq access to international trade and cooperation with other countries in a big way. So I think this is very important. Also, from Sicily, you hear that the government there, the regional government, is now demanding that part of the European Recovery Fund is being used to build the Messina Bridge. And they expect that through such an infrastructure development in Sicily, they will have a GDP increase of 7.5%, which would be quite unique in Europe in terms of a growth rate. So that shows that even under the conditions where you have a complete breakdown of the system, it's interesting that the North Bavarian Courier, which is a newspaper, they had a very interesting article today saying that if you look at all of these crises, maybe we have a systemic breakdown crisis. And that's exactly it. But these two developments about Iraq and Sicily show where is the way out. You just have to go back to the real economy. And these problems are not insurmountable. Right now they look pretty horrifying, but the way back would be to have a global New Deal, not a Green New Deal, but in the intention of Franklin D. Roosevelt and the World Land Bridge and all the programs my late husband was fighting for his entire life. So I think we are at a very, very interesting moment in history. Um, I think that it's now time to become active. So contact us, get into the fight with us, because it is one of these incredible moments. You know, on this show the other day, I said this is a moment like mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, that when for a long time the rights of people, the inalienable rights of people have been violated. The people have the right to stand up. And that was the same idea, what was the content of Schiller's drama Wilhelm Tell, the famous Rütli Oath, where the men of the Rütli Oath basically say, no, there is a limit to the tyrant's power. And it is that kind of a spirit which you have to intervene and shape history at this moment.
And as you pointed out, that was the spirit of the American Revolution. Helga, we're out of time. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again next week.
Yes, stay tuned with us.